Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Tekken 8 for the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Tekken 8 is of course the numbered sequel to Tekken 7 and one of the longest running fighting game franchises in history that features juggle combos galore, wall bouncing, wacky characters, and some of the biggest family drama you could imagine. And that's one of the big key things about Tekken 8 from a narrative perspective, and that is that this is supposed to be the end of the Mishima saga that has pretty much covered the entire gamut of all the Tekken games. It is the root, it is the foundation for which the King of the Iron Fist tournament exists. And that gives us an opportunity to take part in the story mode, though relatively short versions of the story mode that we've seen thus far in a Tekken experience. But it works so much better than Tekken 7's story mode. Instead of focusing on a photojournalist that is narrating what is occurring without the understanding of the wackiness that is associated with the Tekken lore. Now, one of the big things about Tekken 8 from a promotional perspective was Harada, the game's producer, stating that Tekken 8 would be more aggressive than its predecessor. And one of the key things about that was the change from the rage system. Though there are still the low health super move rage arts that were introduced in Tekken 7 that returned in Tekken 8. But instead of focusing on the rage meter and all that, they changed it to the heat meter. And that is a little bar that sits underneath your health. And by activating, you're able to not only have stronger attacks, but you're also able to inflict more chip damage to an adversary as long as you hit them. And it helps restore the health of the fighter that is landing attacks. There are essentially 3 health bars in this game. There's the visible bar that you see at the start of any round. Then there becomes a white bar as that health bar is depleted. Now the white bar is health that can be regenerated as long as the player lands attacks on their opponent. But the red bar, that is health that is completely depleted and never to return, usually occurring when you're in the middle of being juggled or comboed or hit with some heavy attacks. But one of the things about the heat gauge is that if it is depleted during that round, it is gone. So if you activate it and don't take advantage of the activation, you can't utilize that for the rest of the round. The heat gauge also allows for dash canceling. It actually increases the moveset of any character that is utilizing it at that time, and can create some rather cinematic moments, especially if 2 players have the heat gauge activated at the same time and go for attacks, and it becomes a dynamic version of who hits the last shot before the KO. With Tekken being one of the more profound legacy fighters in the genre, where a majority of the characters play exactly the same as they did in Tekken 5 or 6 or 7, or even going back to Tekken 2 and 3, compared to other games that switch up things like Mortal Kombat 1, where it doesn't feel as familiar. And to help players try to either ease their way into Tekken or really compensate for an inability to play at a higher level, there is a new, to a certain extent modern, control setting, and that is the special skill button. The special skill button allows for you to activate a dumbed down version of whatever character you're playing as, their moveset. And this comes with the tapping of, in the case of the PlayStation 5 controller, the L1 button to activate the special skill set of maneuvers. You have, in the case of the PlayStation 5 controller, the square button is the specialty move button, whereas the triangle button is the air combo button. The X button is the power crush counter button, and the circle button is the low attacks, depending on if you're far enough away, or if you're close, they actually do throws instead of low attacks. It also allows for you to do the heat burst with the R1 in the case, once again, of the PlayStation 5, instead of utilizing 2 face buttons to activate heat. And this allows for not only the player who may not be the most intuitive fighting gamer, or just can't really hang with some higher level players, to hold their own if they know exactly how to time themselves properly, how to manage their heat gauge, how to also understand what these buttons do in correlation to what their character does and how it may be able to counterbalance against another player who may or may not have that specialty set activated as well. And that's one of the key things that I love about this button, this specialty skill button. And that is the fact that you can turn it on and off in the middle of a fight at any time. Unlike, say, Street Fighter 6, where you can play as either Martyr controls or classic controls or even dynamic, this game allows you to be a player as you see fit, to be the fighter that you see fit during the moment of the action. If you're able to, say, perform a launcher and knock an opponent in the air, but you don't know how to do their air combo with said launcher to capitalize on it, you can hit the specialty skill button, dash over there, and actually perform an air combo without losing your advantage. I love this. I love the fact that you can be able to toggle it off and on whenever you see fit, and it makes the games even more dynamic because you never know exactly what the opponent is going to do. Will they try to be more simplistic and try to take advantage of you being more aggressive and utilizing the understanding of the legacy controls against you instead of to your advantage? As mentioned, the Rage Art, which is pretty much like the limit break for Tekken fighters since Tekken 7 returns. You also have new implementations like the Tornado, where you can knock down an opponent and really keep them down, and environmental attacks, where if you can really push an opponent through a wall with a heavy attack, it does major damage. Now, while the story mode gives you pretty much a rough understanding of not only the story, of course, the narrative of Tekken 8, but also a mini tutorial, a little bit of an understanding of how to play the game, the real tutorial, which shockingly enough is separate from, say, practice mode, is Arcade Quest. Now, Arcade Quest allows you to create your avatar, very similar to like the Xbox 360 avatars we used to have. And you're able to go about not only learning the game, but also fighting AI-controlled opponents as you battle your way through the arcades, very similar to what was seen in Virtua Fighter 5. But one of the more interesting aspects about Arcade Quest, beyond the fact that this is really a tutorial mode, is the addition of Super Ghost Battle. Super Ghost Battle films not only your ghost, not only your fights, but also the fights of others, especially if you've saved or downloaded those ghosts. And this allows you to play against other fighters without actually playing against other fighters, and learning and understanding and even getting tips to learn how to play, counter, and maybe even react better against certain play styles and certain characters. Beyond the story mode in Arcade Quest, there are, of course, the arcade ladder, where you can just fight random AI opponents and see how well you do to get that Tekken money so you can spend on customization items. There's also the character episodes, which is essentially the character specific endings. So you have to, of course, fight a certain amount of enemies, fight your rival, get your ending. There's also the return of Tekken Ball, which is a 1v1 volleyball experience, but instead of trying to score points by knocking the ball away from the opponent or over the opponent, you're trying to hit them and knock them out with the ball. And the more hits, the more damage it does if it doesn't hit someone for an actual detrimental strike. As noted, there are customization options not only for an avatar but also for each character. Though it's not as beefy as what was seen in Tekken 7, you can make some very interesting customizations. For a lot of gamers, online is what will keep them coming back for more, and thankfully there is a lot connected to the online functionality. Beyond the fact that we get, right out of the gate, crossplay. I cannot say how great it is to have crossplay that's actually functional on day one. There's also the Tekken Fight Lounge, where you can go around and fight other gamers that are stationed at certain arcades, waiting for their next challenger. But you can also have player matches and quick fights, and even ranked matches from the Fight Lounge if you see fit, without sitting down at a particular arcade cabinet. Player matches are rooted in lobbies, and unfortunately it's one of the more finicky experiences of the online functionality thus far. sometimes you'll get stuck in a lobby and it seems like people will just continue to play and you won't be able to get a fight in, or you'll be kicked out of the lobby, of course, and stuff like that will happen, or you'll be disconnected in a mid-fight. Player matches at this point are probably the roughest part if you're not dealing with a group of friends, and if you're just fighting randoms, it doesn't work as well as it could right now. Unlike Quick Fight and Rank that work exceptionally well, other than the fact that for some reason when you try to do a rematch and a player backs out of said rematch, you get frozen for about 30 seconds to a minute before you can go back to the main menu or to the standby. Hopefully that is something that gets ironed out in the next few weeks to months, because it takes a lot longer to get out of an online fight than it does to get into one. Thankfully, from a connectivity perspective, I've had very few laggy fights. I haven't had any disconnected fights. So thus far, very good online functionality. From a technical aspect, once again, the game looks fantastic. The models are easily the best they've ever been. The stages just bounce off the screen. They're bright, they're colorful, they're magnificent. You have a very robust roster with some new characters and a lot of old characters. And thankfully, one of the biggest things about this game that could have been taken advantage of is microtransactions for those customization options. And it really hasn't been, because they give you a lot of money, a lot of currency for just doing simple things like leveling up your character, like playing online, to buy those customization options even if they aren't the most robust compared to the previous Tekken. Overall, this is a magnificent fighting game experience, let alone a Tekken experience. This is a high mark, a benchmark in the franchise that should last for a long time, especially if you're a fan of this fighting style. And even if you're not, thanks to the addition of the specialty set and that simplifying of the control scheme to give players who may not have the functionality or the ability or just the mental aptitude to play a fighting game in the way that other people play, makes this an easy recommendation for both offline and online players, because for online you have, of course, ranked and player and quick battle and even Tekken Brawl, and there are also tournaments very similar to what was set up in Tekken 7. But offline you have a solid story mode, a good tutorial section, of course the versus battles and arcade battles that we all know is going to be a part of a fighting video game. And even better is the Super Ghost Battle, where you can find yourself in a mixture of AI and online AI opponents that gives you the ability to try to really test out your skill even if you don't want to be online fighting real players, even in practice mode. And then if you want to really learn more about your character, there are combo challenges offline. And then to top it off, functionality wise, no real issues other than some slight hiccups when it comes to just engaging a fight, or laggy fights here and there depending on your connection quality and your opponent's connection quality, of course. There's no reason, if you're a fan of the franchise or if you're a fan of fighting games or if you want to just try to get into Tekken. And that's one of the most important things about this. This is a very accessibility friendly game, both from an options menu and from a gameplay perspective, that even if you're not a Tekken veteran, you will more than likely feel right at home with this game after a few hours of playing it. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Tekken 8 for the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Now if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to the Fight Lounge and see if I can take my girl Nina Williams to victory, raise up that rank, and make every opponent that comes her way say, "Oh Lordy."